Welcome. Easy, are we good?
We are all good.
Welcome to the Self Evident Podcast. You got Mike. You got Easy E.
Yo.
We do not have Massey today. He and Carrie are um, off gallivanting. They're going to be doing their own thing. But you will have me for the next couple of podcasts. You will have Easy E, and we will try not to turn it into an NPR hour.
And we will have a vacant seat.
Oh.
Actually, the seat's not even there.
No, I took it because I don't know where my seat went. So I own the seat now. It's mine. I am sitting in his seat in the realest way, right?
You sit on a throne of lies.
Yeah, pretty much. That's okay. I need somewhere to sit.
True, true.
Okay, so last podcast we talked about Martin Luther, and I thought that was a really good podcast. I thought it went really well.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it went really well, but I think that discussion is important of like Luther, his transformation, all of that. And one of the reasons that we covered that is because he nailed the 95 theses on October 31st. Now I've read in other contention that it was November 1st, but it really that
The 31st.
I vote the
First.
31st. Yeah.
Honestly, it could have been like late that night.
Yeah,
Like
maybe it was like
at an indiscriminate time.
he was nailing at 11:59 and the
Yeah.
clock turned before he finished the nailing.
Right.
So that's going to be our theory is that's what happened and that's why there's some contention on the date. Either way though, we have Halloween coming up. Originally Easy I when I was planning out these podcasts, I was thinking, yeah, Friday's Halloween, so we'll do the episode on Friday and we'll do it on Halloween.
Friday is not Halloween.
Friday is not Halloween, Monday is. So then I was in a conundrum of like, okay, do I do the Halloween episode on Halloween or do I do something else on Halloween? And this is what I decided, and this is for you guys. I figured, well, let's have the discussion today, just in case you and your family are having that discussion about, okay, what are we going to do with this? We're feeling less and less like we should just be all in and celebrating. And so I figured we'll cover it on Friday. It gives people a couple of days to kind of figure out, okay, what's your game plan? How are you going to attack this? And then Monday, we're going to cover national election stuff, where are we at, everything going on. So hard pivot on Monday. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you think, Easy?
It's like when stores start rolling out like Christmas things in early October, and then they run out of supplies like halfway through the holiday season.
I I heard a Christmas commercial on the way home yesterday.
No way.
Yep. It was Home Depot selling tools. I'm like, bro, Halloween has not even we're not even out of October.
That's
And
my kind of company right there.
not
Amen.
mine. I am all about the Thanksgiving.
I'm you know what? I've had this talk with many people, but Thanksgiving is you I'm going to say this and so many people are going to get mad at me because
Probably me.
they always do. Thanksgiving is completely outclassed by Christmas because all of your family still come down. You still have a lot of food, way more than you can eat. You can still have chicken, or not chicken. You can still have turkey. You can still have ham. You can still have pork or whatever. You can have that really annoying family talk with the kids' table and the parents' table talking about politics.
But
But
Thanksgiving is
they're
for
Christmas
politics.
presents.
Yes. And I'm glad you show your corporatist shill side.
Of course.
I always knew you were an evil capitalist.
Oh, of course. I feel like at heart, everything is based off of capitalism
Right.
in my life.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Even the people that are hammering on the keys of their Apple laptop at Starbucks about how capitalism needs to die.
Yep.
They're owned by it.
I
I
hired them.
I won't disagree with you, bro. I in the grand scheme of holidays, Christmas is number 1.
Yes.
Thanksgiving, I give it number 2, but I love it, right? Who's that? I already told them you were gone, so you can't show yourself now. Who showed up at the door? Who might it be? Uh, Thanksgiving, I agree with you. Is number two, but I love Thanksgiving. I just love it. I, there's
I'm
something about it,
There's no happy way I can say this, but the past like 3 Thanksgivings I've spent completely alone. So
bro.
I'm not a fan of it.
Are you planning on being alone this Thanksgiving?
I don't have any plans this Thanksgiving.
Then you need to come over.
Maybe.
See, here's the problem, and some of you might appreciate this. When I was a bachelor and doing my own thing,
Is that
there
what
would
I'm
be
called now?
Thanksgivings where I would get invites and I didn't want them. It was like, I appreciate it, I understand, I get it, but it's like, I just want to. I had a couple of Thanksgivings where I made frozen pizza, and now this is like lazy bachelor days. Made frozen pizza and watched movies and played video games, and I was happy. I was good. Now I have a family, and so now I have to entertain the idea of other people. But
I get invites from people that like I would be right there. Like I appreciate the invite, but
if you want to be alone, be
I
alone.
no,
I
it's not that I
I
want to
will
be
not
alone.
get offended.
It's that the invites that I get.
What are you about to say about my invite?
The invites that I get sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes have been from a person to whom I don't want to be with their family on Thanksgiving.
Oh, I know
Yes.
that feeling.
Yes.
Yes. The invite where it's like, oh no.
Right,
Because
like-
I have no good excuse.
Actually, I got like 3
Yeah.
other people
I've got a queue.
asked me. Yeah, so
That's the other problem where you have a bunch of people who have invited you. I've done the Thanksgiving hop where you go to like 2 or 3 different. No,
maybe I
wanna,
might do that this
I
year.
want to hang out and just do my own thing.
I'll take like a few to go boxes.
There you go.
and
Yeah.
just-
Walk the buffet and fill it out and walk out. Thanks, guys. All right. Let's get into this. Halloween.
Old Hallows Eve.
All Hallows Eve. You have to make your decision on how your family is going to approach Halloween. I do believe there are conflicting values in place with Halloween. And my wife and I have had this conversation many times. And you'll see on Facebook, you'll see in media, all of that, the Christian sphere, it gets very contentious about all of this. And so of course I figured we'll throw our hat in the ring, and I'll make my opinion known and let you guys kind of make your decision. But I thought, let's at least give the history. Let's at least have this conversation. Easy, I want you to chime in, where you feel necessary. And of course, you guys as listeners, as viewers, type in, comment, what are your thoughts and feelings on Halloween? Do you celebrate it? Do you not? Do you do something different, like, the church trunk thing or whatever? The trunk or treat.
Oh.
Which
I got fun
maybe
stories about Baptist church trunk or treats, dude. Oh my god!
and we'll get into all of that. We'll have that conversation, but I want to get into the history first, just in case you don't know. Hey, where does this come from? So this whole thing started about 2,000 years ago with the Celts in Ireland. The Celtic Druids, who were pagans, they had religious rituals and festivals revolving around harvest. Okay, so there's a lot of different cultures and civilizations have festivals around harvest. Even Christianity has festivals around harvest. Okay, and those hold major symbolism in Judaism and in Christianity. The whole idea of Pentecost is actually Pentecost happens on celebration of first fruits.
Yeah, that's the early
Right?
rain.
Right. And the whole early rain, late rain, it's opposite of what we think. Go check out Todd's sermon on it. It's great.
Dude, that sermon was so good.
Oh, it was fire, man.
It was water.
Oh, hey now. So the Celts had a pagan festival called Samhain, which celebrated the final harvest. It celebrated death and the onset of winter. So they saw this October 31st, that time, that date is the separation between death and life. And so there was obviously this festival for it. Now their belief was that this day, because it was that line between life and death, aka harvest and then winter, that it was the day of the thinnest line between the physical and the spiritual realm. Now, they believed that the curtain between the physical and spiritual realm was actually lifted on that day because it was thinnest, right? So, therefore, they believe that dead spirits were allowed to roam the earth. Now, you kind of see where we're going with this, but we'll get there. So they had offerings, rituals, sometimes animal sacrifices, wearing of animal skulls and skins. Divination for fortune telling would occur at these festivals to tell things such as crop expectations, weather forecasts, even romantic relationships. Now, we have to put ourselves in their mindset. Their mindset is it's harvest, we're about to hit winter, everything dies during winter. It's even a time when you cull the weakest of your herds because you know those animals aren't going to make it in the winter anyways. So they don't have internet, scientific study, they don't have technology. They have to go with what they know, their customs, and of course, they have to depend on spiritual.
Right.
You got something?
No, everything back then, like I love the fact that you said there's no internet because I feel like to an extent there's nothing that happens around here because of experience anymore.
No,
Like
no, you're right.
back then, like you knew these things because of trial and error. You knew these things
Right.
because your fathers had failed and their fathers had failed so that you could eventually succeed.
Yes.
And
And
it's not like that
and
anymore.
I think we get it in our head that they were outright evil satanic, right? We
Right.
get the image of the very dark robes and the putting the young person on the altar, whatever. Like, but in reality, what was going on, especially during these pagan festivals, which we as Christians, we've got to see that word in that religious activity objectively and understand they were they were just trying to do what they could do to survive and thrive.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily like dark evil festivals. It's like celebration. We've got food. We're celebrating the harvest. We're having fun. We're fortune telling and divination. I'm not saying those things are right. What I'm saying is let's ease off on it's always started as just evil, wicked, conscious practice.
Right. Clear the air about it.
Clear the air about it.
Pagan doesn't mean Satan worshiper.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. That's honestly, that's really where I'm trying to get. And I appreciate that
yeah.
you said it. Is pagan doesn't necessarily mean outright Satan worship.
In fact, it would probably mean it. Obviously, they're not for God because they're pagan, which means it would be more lenient to say, or it would make more sense to say, okay, well, if you're not for God, then you're against God.
Right.
That makes sense to say.
Which in the real spiritual sense, yes.
Right. They had the idea to talk to other powerful spirits or things in the spiritual realm because they're things not of here, not of the physical realm, and they have quote unquote like powers or the ability to tell you the future or whatever.
Right.
And they found it probably as a fascination and something
Yeah.
that they wanted to get
Yeah.
deeper into. And unfortunately, all of those are really, really bad spirits to get into.
Yes. And in America, we we struggle with whether or not the spiritual is real.
Right.
In other areas, say Africa, it's not a question of if spiritual is real, it's what's the most powerful spiritually. And so you have whole tribes in areas that are demonically oppressed because they're just trying to survive and they know they have to appease these spirits in order to not lose their kids and not lose their crops and not lose their animals.
Right.
There is actual spiritual oppression going on in those areas. So they
Dude.
don't, and the things they go through and the things they see, there's no doubt in their mind the spiritual is real. The question is, okay, what what's going to take care of me and be good to me,
So
right?
this is like a this is a very childish like answer, but that reminds me of the Disney movie The Princess and the Frog. Because the main antagonist is like this voodoo doctor,
Yeah.
and in order to cause the two main characters, the two main protagonists, to suffer, he gets in contact with the voodoo spirits, with his quote unquote friends on the other side,
Right.
which eventually, spoiler alert, he fails, and instead of the friends trying to help him even more, they end up dragging him to hell.
Right. And that's and in our culture we witness it, but we kind of have this separation. That gets back to the whole technology idea, is we have this separation from all of this reality,
Right.
and so we tend to see it all as story. There's always that degree of separations because it doesn't penetrate into our normal lives. I think one of the biggest lies Satan has casted upon us, especially in modern Western society, is that he doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
That's that man, he's we've made his job easy.
Dude, if so, there are some people who live very, very good lives.
Yeah.
They've had very little strife, very little conflict, and I've come to realization that there are some people that the enemy won't attack because if they're living a good life, why would they have to turn to a good God
There's
that's loving?
Yeah, I no, I actually absolutely agree. I've some of the most dangerous how do I say this? The worst off people are the ones who are the most comfortable
Yeah.
because there is no reason to change. It's when you go through tragedy, through suffering, through evil, through wickedness, when you go through the hardships,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like that veil gets lifted and you start questioning what else is out there, what's more, what is this really about, why am I going through this? And I think that is a, and a lot of people take that event as a switch to say, well, obviously God isn't real because of this event, but they thought about it through the
Yeah.
event. And I still stand by the conviction that I don't believe the vast majority, I can't say all because I can't make an absolute,
Right.
but the vast majority of atheists do not come to their position logically. There's an emotional event, there's something that happened that they said, because of this that happened personally in my life, I just can't believe in God.
Right. I feel like everybody questions regardless of where they are in life. I feel like the the top pastor, the one that has open communication with God, will still question from time to time.
Yeah.
And even the hard atheist that has studied the Bible back and front, which really doesn't mean anything. Um,
How many times have I seen an atheist say, I know the Bible better than any
dude,
Christian?
I can read a textbook on the genealogy of Sir Isaac Newton, and I won't understand a single thing of
Right.
it, but I can say I read it. Wow. But everyone questions, and honestly, everyone doubts too. But it's really what you do with that doubt, because you
Yes.
can either question and doubt, and then with that seek to find an answer, therefore having faith of some sorts,
To
or do nothing with it.
to put a capper on this and get back to Halloween, but
Right.
I think you're making a great point. C.S. Lewis has a quote about that. He says, even the most art, and I'm butchering the quote, but hear me out. You can look it up. He basically says, even the most ardent atheist in in the dark of night, in the middle of his room by himself,
Yeah.
will question what he believes and whether or not there's a God.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we as Christians see that like militant, ardent atheists as like they are so sure of themselves. They're so sure, they have no doubts. Why don't they have any doubts? What do they know that I don't know? When they're alone in their room, sooner or later there will be doubts.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of wonder the ones that are the more militant, more aggressive, more pushing of it. Not that this is always the case, but I think there are those cases where they're the ones who are the most insecure. It's kind of like that whole homophobe thing, like the guy who's picking on gay people the most. It's probably because he's struggling with homosexual
Yeah.
urges himself. Like there is some type of truth to that. We buck against what we fear inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think it goes down to what you put yourself into. Is there an insecurity somewhere deep in there, and that's why you're pursuing after it, right? You know that man, that's a whole side conversation. See, you guys get me started, and here's where we go. Anyways,
Sorry.
back to the history of Come Back With Me. We're back and we're in. Look into my paper. Spirit realm. Okay, so they believe this curtain was lifted. Because this curtain was lifted, they believe that the dead were allowed to roam the earth. Now, one more point on this whole like pagan. Okay, let's understand it objectively. Bobbing for apples was considered a way to determine the spirit's blessings on a couple's relationship. That sounds like, I'm not condoning, but that sounds like people having fun, right? You know, kind of like when what can I compare it to? People go to a fortune teller like, oh, this is fun. I'm not saying there aren't spiritual ramifications to what you do.
Right.
What I'm saying is, I think they saw it as, hey, this is fun, and kind of, hey, what's
Yeah.
people get into the horoscope. I wonder what my horoscope says. I wonder if it lines up.
I mean, there's some fascinating part about it. Like, I think even looking at the whole star signs, I think the whole thing is absolutely dumb, and basing your personality off of anything, even deeply researched personality tests. I think basing your personality off of what you
Right.
get is it goes completely against what God has for you. Um I think it's complete just all for fun.
Right.
And I used to watch like these BuzzFeed Unsolved, where like these two guys would go to presumably haunted places, and they just make fools of themselves. And
Yeah.
while they're going out and from time to time would engage in like into real spiritual activity and mess with things they don't understand.
And that's where the Christian has to understand,
Right.
okay, are you having fun, or are you messing with something you don't understand?
Right.
Because what those people don't understand is something can attach to them if they're running around these areas, right? Like the whole graveyard at midnight type activity. You don't realize what you're stirring up spiritually. This Ouija boards.
Yeah.
I remember several times having conversations with you guys when I was leading the young adults of saying how dangerous these things are, because people pull them out as a game, right? Once again, they're having fun. It's not necessarily they're trying to summon Satan, but they don't understand the doors that they're opening.
Right.
And there are plenty of accounts of people getting in deeper than they really wanted to spiritually.
Oh yeah.
Because of Ouija boards, right? Dude. We think because it's sold at Walmart that it's harmless. There's no spiritual connection to it.
Dude.
Isn't it?
Like, I go to Walmart, I'm looking for groceries. I may be looking for like a couple of house appliances. And when I was a kid, I was looking in the Lego section.
And wait, you weren't shopping for possession?
No, that wasn't on my to get list back then.
Possessions now 20% less here at Walmart. So people who were more interested in the spirits, occultism, and divination began to believe that the spirits were stuck on earth until they got the right offering. You see where this is going, such as wealth, food, and drink. They believe the spirits who weren't treated well enough would trick those who didn't pay up. These trickster spirits were believed to take on grotesque, scary appearances. So traditions developed believing that wearing a costume to look like a spirit would fool the wandering spirits. Others believed that carving nasty faces in things like gourds or turnips and putting a candle in it would ward off the spirits.
I think I would laugh if I was walking past somebody's house and instead of a jack-o'-lantern, they had a turnip sitting on their front porch. I would laugh
Yeah,
so hard.
yeah. I think today's culture, yeah, your turnip's so scary. Now, from the Christian side, November 1st became All Saints Day. All Saints Day was originally another date. I think it was in May. They moved it to try and counteract the Samhain festivals. Now, this was to honor the saints of the faith, right? The church said, okay, we're counteracting this. Let's honor those who have died who are big in the faith. That meant Halloween or All Hallows Eve, hallow being hallowed, hallowed be thy name, right? Hallowed means sacred, was the night before. So the eve of the sacred day. Holiday, Halloween, the whole celebration, the Samhain festival that kind of intermixed into all of it, came from immigrants over to the U.S. in about the 1800s and developed in what it is today. I think it was around the 1940s it really got commercialized. Did you know a quarter of all candy sales happens for Halloween?
What are the other three
Corporate.
quarters?
Just throughout the day. Movies.
Oh, that makes sense.
Do people still go to movies?
I don't know. There are very few movies that have come out.
Yeah,
that
I
I'm
haven't
interested
seen
in
anything
seeing,
I really want to see.
But
Comment. Do you still go to the movies? Probably not. There's probably like one person.
I mean, I just pirate all this. I mean,
Okay.
I am a
Yes,
law-abiding
yes.
citizen,
Yeah, of
and
course,
I
of course.
pay for
I-
all of my.
In college, I was writing for an underground rag. We had fake names and everything because we knew the administration might come after us. And one of the articles I wrote was basically defending Napster. And it's kind of to my shame now. It's like, okay, you stupid college student. But basically, my argument was, look, these guys have a lot of money. Do they really need to go after people sharing music online? They don't make most of their proceeds from the music. They make their proceeds from the tours, all of that, blah, blah, blah. But looking back, I would have a very solid argument with myself. And present me would probably win the argument.
You'd completely destroy
I would.
past use.
I would.
Pride.
I would maul
Tear 'em
myself,
apart.
tear myself apart.
Make a public example.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is there's a video going around and has been going around, John Ramirez. And I say all that to say I don't necessarily disagree with the guy. So John Ramirez, if you don't know him, he was a former very high level warlock in Satanism. Type of guy who was sitting with Satan by his bedside at night having conversations with him. And you got to check out his testimony of how he grew up, what he got into, and then how he left Satanism, how he rejected Satan.
Is he bald?
No, he's
Okay, I'm thinking of another one.
Latino guy, hair kind of like Massey's, hair kind of like his.
I was gonna make a joke, but I'm not.
Yeah,
I'd rather
no.
keep my job.
Yeah, you're doing well.
Thank you.
You're doing well right now. So Ramirez talks about Halloween, and he's very adamant against it. He talks about when he was in Satanism, Halloween was that high holiday, right?
Yeah.
He got married on Halloween. He baptized his daughter into Satanism on Halloween. Like
Wow.
that was the day for them. So of course, he is very sensitive to the topic of Christians celebrating Halloween, and I don't blame him. And he even talks about dressing up your kids in costumes removes their identity, so therefore they are open property for Satan.
Oh.
Now, I was thinking a lot about this because it's okay. I understand where he's coming from, but is that a Holy Spirit led position, or
Right.
is that a rejection of Satanism and perhaps a using of something Satan has taught him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I was thinking about this morning. Satan is the father of lies. So Satan, of course, is going to lie and misdirect and pervert and twist and inflate his sense of power and authority over this realm,
Right.
right? So, because I was thinking about Esau and Jacob. Jacob dressed up as Esau.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Ramirez was saying is Esau lost out on his birthright, right? So he's saying like you reject and you could lose out. I don't scripturally, God is a God of reconciliation, a God of forgiveness. The prodigal son rejects his father, takes what's his, goes out, squanders it, rejects his father's name, legacy, and inheritance, right? Comes back forgiven, given more than what he had before, right? So there is reconciliation, forgiveness, and returning, right? Ramirez is saying you could be taking on a curse by dressing up for Halloween.
But then that begs the question, is it just Halloween that if you dress up on, you're removing your identity, therefore allowing space for demons to come in? Or is that every day you dress up as something different?
I don't think it's a possession topic. I don't think necessarily he's saying it's a possession topic. Because I wondered about like, so would that mean actors?
Right.
If I play a character in a movie, am I then opening myself up to be property of Satan, right?
Right.
I think anybody who's not saved is an open vessel for Satan.
Absolutely, because they don't have the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Occupying
They are
that
property of
space.
this territory.
Yeah.
Because this territory is still technically run by Satan.
Right.
We are from a kingdom representing that kingdom in enemy territory, but we're taking territory, right? And Ramirez, to his credit, absolutely talks about this concept of territory. They were very aware of territory satanically.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing about Satan. Satan watches what God does, watches God's system. Satan can't create. Yeah. He's not a creator, he's a destroyer. So what does he do? He takes and twists and perverts and imitates and mocks. You ever notice satanic rituals are just an inversion of Christian rituals?
Yeah.
Baptism, sacrifice, the black mass, right? And we'll get into the Church of Satan versus Satanism in a second. But Ramirez is talking about this, and I think he makes a very good point. He's basically saying, why would you flirt that line? Why would you play on a holiday that is really, in all intents and purposes, whether subversive or not, devoted to Satan?
Yeah.
And think about this. What are the pillars of Halloween? The grotesque, the macabre, death, fear, horror, vice, college campus. I was thinking about this morning. What Halloween was the excuse for vice?
I thought you said college campuses, as in that was part of.
That's part of the pillar of Halloween. Yes, college. They are kind of.
No,
they are kind of though. But Ramirez even quotes. So this is where we get into the Church of Satan,
right.
which is different, but I'll talk about how it's not necessarily all that different. So Ramirez even quotes Anton LaVey and says, Anton LaVey was the founder of the Church of Satan. He said, I'm glad that Christian parents let their children worship the devil at least one night out of the year.
Wow.
And that is a question, is if we are participating in this, are we acquiescing? Are we giving our permission to? Are we promoting through our participation something that is contrary to God? Now, I don't necessarily draw that hard line of I'm going to stay in the house with the lights off. I'm not necessarily the type either that I'm going to redeem it for me and I'm going to turn it into fall festival. That's up to you to decide, right? But I'm giving you perspectives so you can kind of make your own decision. Ramirez goes on and even talks about, look, on Halloween, witches and warlocks are actually, he uses the word praying, but I guess I would consider it more of casting over candy that they're going to be handing out.
Yeah.
And if you look at it in the spiritual, there is something to be said about that whole process, because even Christ's garment being touched can heal.
Yeah.
Even Peter's handkerchief can heal.
I mean, look at the sacrifices in the Old Testament about what was it, the consecrated bread, where people would pray over the bread, and
It was consecrated.
it was specifically told, like, you do not eat of this bread because
Right.
it's been prayed over, it's not yours.
Which, and I'm doing a massive study on Jacob and Esau, and I'm not across the finish line yet. But one thing I was thinking about is everybody calls Jacob the deceiver, right? And we consider that really wrong and evil. David eats the bread in the temple, yet Jesus doesn't castigate that concept
Right.
as sin, right? So it's, anyways, that's a whole nother aside. Anyways, that process of sanctifying an item or an area. Remember, people are told, remove your sandals for this ground is holy.
Right.
That means physical objects can carry spiritual significance one way or another. Ramirez in other interviews will talk about items that you bring into your house. And this is true. Items that you bring into your house can
Dude,
bring in spiritual. You and I have had that conversation.
absolutely. I've had objects that I've had to throw away because unknowingly I had brought things into my house that I bought from like estate sales and garage sales that I thought looked really cool. I didn't think twice about it, but it brought spiritual things and had something in my house, which I had to then remove the object and then anoint the house.
Because you and I, you had bought something from an estate sale. You and I had a conversation. We were conversing about spiritual oppression attaching to an item,
Right.
right? And you were feeling that spiritual oppression. You were feeling why is this going on around? You got rid of it, anoint the house, right? There are other items in the house that you had to, converse with others about, of getting rid of, and that kind of thing. I
Yeah,
don't know where
which-
you are with that,
I
but
I have no.
you're recognizing the spiritual significance of it. Dream catchers.
Oh yeah.
Dream catchers are a spiritually significant item, an artifact.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, the people who are intimate with demonic possessions and spiritual warfare and all of that will tell you items in your house, especially ritualistic items from pagan worship and that kind of thing, like masks from some exotic tribe and that kind of thing. Like when I was roofing, I was in a house that had all of these different things in the house from around the world. And it was so weird because I look back on it and I recognize that just like empty spiritual oppression. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
that heaviness, that like it's so weird to describe because it's like heavy, but it's empty.
Yeah.
It's a lonely feeling. There's no warmth and peace to it.
Right.
Sorry, you were gonna say something.
I feel like that's really the main reason, or one of the main reasons why Christ tells us to not have attachment to worldly things. Because
Huh.
if we don't have attachment to worldly things, the worldly things that we do have won't have attachments to
Right.
them typically. But it
And it's good to be aware of like what is in your household.
right.
And your rug that you bought at Walmart, you don't have to look at it and be like, oh, there's
think it's
demons
fine.
attached to it, right? Very much different concepts.
Now, if you bought it from Craigslist,
Yes, then you have troubles. So
But-
I do want I do want to make a note about Anton LaVey, because I think it's very important to understand the difference between the Church of Satan and Satanism. And I'll get to where they're similar at the same time at the end of it. So Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan publicly states it does not worship Satan as a real entity, but an idea. They ascribe to the Luciferian ideal. In other words, standing against authority. God is the ultimate ideal of authority, so therefore standing against authority, being on your own, right?
it's like the edgy teenage. rebellion
Yes,
things.
it's edgy teenage rebellion. They're a very theatric group. So there's a lot of theatrics involved in the whole Church of Satan. They tend to invert anything that is considered sacred, right? So baptism, communion, all of that. Their whole goal is to invert that. to mock it. Okay. Now, here's, well, let me get into LaVey first, and then I'll come to my conclusion. LaVey, this guy was kind of a showman. Okay. I think you look at a guy like Aleister Crowley, that's evil. Aleister Crowley was full in on all of the occult and all of that. Not that LaVey wasn't, but LaVey was more of a showman, I think.
Yeah.
I think he was more interested in making a splash, mocking religion, all of that. He likes being a contrarian. And it seems he was more interested in the idea that Christians are hypocrites and allowing their kids to participate in acts that align with an imaginary Satan. But he recognized the clash of consistency if Christians are championing a day that puts death, the macabre, demonic, and darkness as the focal point. Now, LaVey is interested in the contradiction of Christians. And what I find interesting is there's a story about how he was a musician at a local church, but he moonlighted as a musician at a strip club. And he saw plenty of guys who went to church on Sunday also at that strip club. And so therefore Christians are hypocrites. My first question is, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like, aren't you what you're pointing the finger at those men for? Now, whether or not LaVey actually believed in a real Satan and thought what he was doing had spiritual significance, he's still a vessel for it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that Satan's not real. He's just all the more a puppet for the whole process, for the mocking of religion, for the mocking of the sacred.
I mean, they say they're not celebrating or worshiping Satan, but as you were saying, like their aim is to invert everything that we do, which is literally what Satan does with God.
Yes.
Like you say that you are not worshiping or celebrating one thing, and yet you're attaching everything that one thing does to your religion.
Right. And that's where, see it with sober eyes. When the Church of Satan says, we're going to open a kids group, it doesn't matter if they tell the kids over and over and over, look, we don't actually believe in Satan. We want you to be in charge of yourself. It's still a satanic agenda.
You're just in denial at that point.
You are. Now, Satanism worships Satan as a real entity.
That's out of the closet.
Yes. So know that when you're looking at the Church of Satan, more than likely a lot of them don't actually believe Satan is real. They're just having fun, right? And this is where that conversation gets into of, does your fun have more spiritual consequences than you believe? Because guess what? God says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a kid who doesn't understand that stealing is wrong and he's constantly stealing, that doesn't mean that he's not still sinning.
Right.
He is still sinning. He's still breaking the law.
Yep. And this conversation comes to, you have to decide for your family how far you're going to go in this whole thing. And there's a part of me screaming out right now that says, if there has to be a question about it, then don't do it.
Yeah. I look at it almost, this is a very, very poor comparison, but it's almost like alcohol. People say, what's wrong with doing a little bit of it? But what's right with doing it at all?
Right. And there's it's all up to your conviction, right? Because scripture even says, look, whatever, if you eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols. Now, other people will say, yeah, but it says don't eat meat to sacrifice to idols. Now, Paul makes the differentiation. Says, look, if you find out, hey, that meat was sacrificed first before you eat it, Paul's saying, look, you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. You don't have to worry about that. He says, but if you're with your brother and somebody goes, hey, this meat just got sacrificed to a random pagan god, you should eat this now. You say, look, it's best to reject it, lest you confuse your brother.
Yeah.
Lest you lessen yourself in terms of spiritual, and where your position lies. And I think that's important to understand in the whole Halloween debate is think about where your position is. Now, some people say, I'm going to redeem it. I'm going to hand out Jesus tracts to every kid that comes by. If that's your conviction, go for it.
You
Right?
might have a lot of toilet paper and eggs thrown
Yes.
at your house.
Be ready to have to repaint your car or something. Like that. I personally, for my family, do lean more in the direction of John Ramirez. I My personal position is, look, a day like Halloween that really does put death, evil, darkness at the forefront, I'd rather not get invested in it at
Yeah.
all. Um, and Melissa and I were having this conversation. What do we do? And my position is, look, let's watch some movies. We'll throw some candy at them. You know, they're good, right? And it's not like, hey, it's Halloween and you can't go out, but here's some candy. It's, hey,
Right.
let's have a fun night. Let's hang out.
Yeah.
When
and-
he's a little bit older and he starts to understand, look, everybody else is doing this thing, but why aren't we? The conversation can be had. Look, we celebrate the Lord. This celebrates something less than the Lord. We just, as a family, we're not going to invest in that.
yeah.
We'll invest in the kingdom. We'll invest in ourselves as family, right? Now, what I'm hearing in my head are the people go, but what about Christmas? You have a tree in your house. Read the whole thing. When scripture is talking about a tree, it's talking about they take the tree and then they carve it into an idol. Me having a tree in my house, I do not believe holds spiritual oppressive significance on it.
That's like, I can connect that to people use candles for seances. But
Right.
I have a
Thank
candle
you.
burning in my room from time to time because it makes my room.
So therefore, you're having a seance because you have a flavored, which I've really gotten into candles.
Dude,
I
me
love
too.
candles, man.
It's like I at least want one candle in my house, specifically my room, because it just makes
smells good.
everything smell nicer.
Yeah, and there's an ambiance around it. I like it. But Christmas, if you look at the pillars of what Christmas is about, Christ.
Yeah.
And I think about the feeling I get between Halloween and Christmas. Like Christmas, there's a peace
Yeah.
feeling. There's a wholeness feeling. There's a family feeling. There's a fullness.
Even breaking it down, Halloween at its core is about fear. It's about scaring.
Yes.
It's about terror. While Christmas literally is about joy. It's about peace. It's about the entire world putting aside their differences and loving each other.
Well, and to pull that further, one of the massive pillars is Christ, the
Yeah.
birth of Christ. Now, yes, I get it. People say, oh, he was born in the spring, he wasn't born in the winter. I get it. There were pagan holidays that happened around the winter solstice. Holidays happen around major events, and that gets back to that whole disconnection thing. We are degrees separated, so we don't understand the harvest seasons. We don't understand the lunar system, the lunar seasons. We don't understand the times of the year. And
Because-
so we look back at these holidays, we go, oh, well, there's pagan connection. There's also Christian connection to the lunar calendar.
Yeah.
There's Christian connection to the harvest and festivals around the harvest, right? There is a reason we recognize in another sense the summer equinox and the winter equinox, right?
yeah.
It's a very momentous occasion in the process and cycle of life. I'm more akin to celebrate Christmas because what is Christmas, right? What's the foundation of Christmas versus what is the foundation of Halloween?
Right.
Just like Easter, right? Springtime, there's a seasonal celebration that happened during that time, right? But we also take Easter because there was an event that happened. Now, because people had Easter bunnies and candy eggs and all of that, do I reject it? No, because what's the underlying pillar of the moment? Christ,
Yeah.
right? Thanksgiving, Pillar, and we can have a whole discussion. I saw it this morning. Thanksgiving. Why do you celebrate Thanksgiving? It's not really about love. Look, it happened. And yes, pilgrims and Native Americans treat each other poorly. It was on both sides. Native Americans reached out and helped the pilgrims survive. Guess what? Hey, let's celebrate that. You should be all the more celebrating. Hey, the Native Americans really helped us all out.
They might have redeemed themselves in that moment, but you know who redeems you for life?
Ooh,
Jesus.
for eternity.
Yeah. For life in this one and the next. So that makes Christmas
Yeah, there you go.
all the
Christmas.
better.
So to close this out, guys, you have to make your decision for you. I thought I would give you kind of different facts, viewpoints, that kind of thing, where I'm sitting on the whole thing. And I get back to, if we've got to have this discussion every year, this big of a discussion every year in the mainstream Christian community, then maybe let's err on the side of caution and go the route towards Christ, right?
Yeah.
Separate ourselves out from the world. But if you're like, you know what, we're going to do a trunk or treat, we're going to just do a fall festivity. I like
There's nothing
pumpkins
wrong
and
with having
gourds and-
community.
yes.
Like at any time of the year.
Go for it. That's between you and the Lord, and I don't mean that as a convicting that's between you and the Lord. Like it really is between you and the Lord, and the conviction that the Holy Spirit lays on you of what spot are you willing to go to. But what I will notice is the Christians who are all out on Halloween have a lot less maturity in the spirit.
Yeah.
It tends to be the more maturity you've got in the spirit, the less you're going, oh, I can't wait for Halloween, and I think that is an important barometer. Any last words? One last line?
No.
All right.
I got it all
No,
out.
I appreciate it, man. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this helps. Monday, we will be talking about election stuff. We'll get all that covered. All right. So until then, you guys have a great weekend. Love you guys.
Peace.